I thought if I kept showing up, they'd finally see me, but I was becoming part of the wallpaper. My name is Tom Grayson. I'm 43 years old. I live in Akron, Ohio, and until not too long ago, I was the senior infrastructure architect at Parker & Wells Technologies. At least, that's what the business card said. What I actually did, that was half the company's back end, sysadmin, cloud services, and God help me, even buying coffee filters when we ran out. It was easier to just handle it all myself than wait for someone else to screw it up. I was the first one in every morning and the last one out every night. I documented everything, backed up our code base twice a day, ran network tests before meetings, and patched security holes before anyone even noticed them. Meanwhile, my boss, Darren Wells, co-founder, visionary, idea guy, walked around with his perfect hair and $800 shoes, charming investors and acting like he personally soldered every connection in the server room. At first, I didn't mind. Some people talk. Some people build. I liked building. But slowly, things started to rub the wrong way. Clients would rave about how smoothly our systems ran. Flawless implementation, one said on a conference call. Darren smiled and said, "Thanks. I've worked hard to keep us stable." And I just sat there, muted, because correcting him would have made me look petty. It was like that for years. I kept telling myself that the work spoke for itself, that someone would notice. But no one did. Not when I cleaned up a catastrophic server migration in one weekend. Not when I restructured our entire authentication pipeline to prevent a potential breach. Not even when I trained the juniors from scratch, because Darren kept hiring people who seemed smart, but didn't know a socket from a spigot. Still, I didn't say anything. I kept grinding, kept producing, kept waiting. Until the disrespect became something sharper, something routine. It started small. A missed invite to a pitch meeting. A presentation where my name was conveniently left off the credits. Darren said, "It's just optics, Tom. You know this stuff better than anyone." But that didn't stop him from taking the win when things went right. Then came the golf promotions. You know the type, Brent from sales, fresh out of college with a wide grin and zero clue how our systems worked, suddenly becoming a critical part of the future. Meanwhile, I was still sitting in the same glass-walled office that doubled as the place where broken coffee machines came to die. When Brent got promoted to product liaison, and Darren started inviting him to strategy lunches, I knew exactly what was happening. They were grooming their yes men, the next generation of smile and wave. And me? I was just the guy who kept the lights on. Literally. I remember walking out of the office one night, close to midnight, the parking lot completely empty. My breath came out in clouds. My key fob buzzed in my hand. And all I could think was, they wouldn't last a day without me. But they wouldn't realize that until I was gone. And I was getting real close to making that happen. I started realizing I wasn't just invisible, I was being actively replaced. It started around spring. Darren came back from one of his networking retreats in Napa, full of stories about synergy and youthful energy. 2 days later, the interns arrived. Not the usual CS students with GitHub profiles and student debt, no. These were all smiles and stilettos, resumes padded with buzzwords and fluff. Marketing majors, mostly. None of them had ever touched a terminal window. One of them, a blonde girl named Summer, tried to double-click a .sh file and looked confused when it didn't launch. Another asked what a firewall actually did, like it was a myth someone made up to scare children. They were all stationed near Darren's office, their desks arranged like some kind of spotlighted showroom. Every time I passed by, I'd hear laughter. Not the casual kind, the high-pitched, performative kind that followed Darren around like perfume. I tried to mind my own business, but then I caught Summer trying to access our secure dev environment, root-level access. Her credentials failed, of course, but the logs didn't lie. I traced it, flagged it, and brought it up with Darren. He didn't even blink, just smirked and said, "She's curious." "They're here to learn, Tom." "Learn what?" "How to break a production server." I tried to explain the risk, how we couldn't have interns poking around core infrastructure without supervision. He waved a hand like I was overreacting. "Relax," he said, leaning back in his Herman Miller chair like he was about to drop some profound wisdom. "We need fresh blood, people with new ideas. You handle the tech. Let me handle the culture." Culture. That was the word he kept using as more of them showed up, 5 in total by the end of the month. All underqualified, all dressed like they were heading to a rooftop cocktail party. I asked HR where they came from. I was told not to worry about it. Executive referrals. Meanwhile, our deployment timelines were getting tighter, and no one was reviewing code except me. Brent was now leading client calls, ones I used to handle. When I asked Darren why I was being pulled off key meetings, he said, "You're more valuable behind the scenes. Brent has better client presence." Client presence. Right. Brent once asked me if we still used HTML for our backend. I knew then what was happening. I wasn't just being ignored. I was being phased out. Slowly, quietly. The knowledge I carried was no longer seen as value. It was a threat. I didn't fit the image Darren was building. He wanted slick suits, quick smiles, people who looked good on a pitch deck, not someone who wore flannel and actually understood subnet masking. So I did what I always did. I kept the systems running. I kept the interns out of prod. I made myself essential. But I also started preparing. If I was going to be pushed out, I wasn't going quietly. They didn't see me anymore, but they'd feel the hole I left behind. I wasn't going to destroy anything, but I could make damn sure no one else would claim it. By June, the building emptied earlier and earlier. Brent and the interns were always out by 5. Off to some cross-functional happy hour Darren had greenlit as a team-building exercise. HR clapped along. Even engineering stopped pushing late changes. But me? I stayed. Those last few weeks, I was the only one around after dark. Just me, the hum of server racks, and the flicker of monitors. I liked the quiet. It reminded me of when I actually loved this job, when I built things that mattered, when no one hovered over my shoulder asking if we could make the dashboard more vibe-forward. The investor showcase was coming up, Darren's big event. He'd been rehearsing for weeks, practicing his TED Talk tone in the mirror, I imagined. And while he practiced his hand gestures, I rebuilt our infrastructure from the ground up, hardened everything. New logic trees, sandboxed environments, rollback triggers. Every single failsafe, fallback, and circuit breaker system, that was me. I documented everything, but only internally. Nothing was uploaded to our public Confluence, because I knew what was coming. One night, sometime after 11, I was refactoring some old API endpoints when I heard voices down the hallway. I figured it was cleaning staff, but then I heard Darren's laugh, that smooth, easy chuckle he saved for charm offensives. He's been around too long, he was saying. He'll walk without a fuss. Quiet type. Doesn't want trouble. Another voice, HR. We'll frame it as restructuring. Nothing personal. Then a man I didn't recognize. What if he pushes back? Darren scoffed. He won't. He's got no leverage. He built the foundation, sure, but anyone can maintain it. Anyone. That was when I opened the file. See, months ago, after they sidelined me from a system migration I personally architected, I started drafting a contingency, not to break the system, but to protect it. A logic lock buried inside the scheduler, invisible unless you knew where to look. The kind of thing you only notice when it's too late. It wasn't sabotage. It was authentication revalidation, something I wrote after an intern accidentally overrode a deployment branch. If the system ever detected my admin status was removed while I was connected to the core infrastructure, it would freeze all non-verified credentials and lock the master pipeline. No one could log in. No one could push builds. Not unless they could answer a series of challenge response keys only I knew. No documentation. No backup access. I stared at the code that night, not running it. Not yet. Just sitting with it, letting the cursor blink in silence while the building around me slept. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad anymore. I was done. They thought I'd go quietly, that I'd vanish like a ghost shift, unseen, unthanked, unmourned. But ghosts don't leave fingerprints. I left mine everywhere. Lines of logic, buried switches, traps that weren't meant to hurt anyone, just to remind them that someone built this. And it wasn't Darren. It never was. I didn't hit enter. Not yet. But I left the file open, cursor ready. Because if they were going to pull the trigger, I wanted to be watching when it happened. And I wanted the system to respond accordingly. 10 minutes after I left, the system recognized the device handover and triggered the lockout. That Monday started like any other. Darren strolled into the office around 10:30, wearing his usual smug grin and a blazer he probably didn't pay for. He stopped by my desk, holding a paper cup like it was a prop in a commercial. "How's the demo environment coming?" he asked, already halfway down the hall. "Locked and ready," I said without looking up. He gave me a thumbs up, didn't say thanks, and vanished into his glass office. Typical. The air in the building was different. Quiet, sure, but tight, like the calm before a storm. People were avoiding eye contact. Brent wouldn't look at me at all. And when I bumped into Joanna from HR in the break room, she flinched like I'd caught her doing something illegal. By Tuesday afternoon, I got the email. Subject line, meeting at 5 p.m. No body, no context, just dread. I didn't respond, didn't ask questions. I already knew. At exactly 5, I walked into the small conference room near the elevators. Darren was already seated, looking unbothered. Joanna sat beside him, a folder in front of her like it was a menu she didn't want to read aloud. "Tom," Darren said, gesturing to the chair across from them. "Glad you could make it." I sat down, didn't bother to smile. Joanna cleared her throat. "We appreciate your contributions to Parker and Wells Technologies. but due to organizational restructuring. You're terminating me, I finished. Effective immediately, right? She blinked. Yes, I nodded. Calm, controlled. Darren leaned forward. Look, Tom, this isn't personal. The company's changing. We need different energy now. More client-facing, more agile. I get it. I cut in. You want people who look good in meetings and know how to golf. He opened his mouth, but I was already reaching into my bag. I pulled out my laptop, closed the lid gently, and slid it across the table toward Joanna. Device returned. Passwords cleared. Two-factor removed. You should be good. She reached for it cautiously, like she thought it might explode. Darren nodded slowly, still trying to find the right words to pretend this wasn't a hit job. We'll make sure your severance is fair. I'm not worried, I said, standing. I built everything that matters here. I'll be fine. I walked out before they could respond. I didn't slam the door, didn't look back. I just kept walking, out the front doors, down the concrete steps, into the warm spring air that suddenly felt like the first breath I'd taken in months. 10 minutes later, the trigger fired. The system registered that my laptop, the authorized anchor device, had been handed off and disconnected from the secure network. It cross-referenced the timestamp with my access logs, confirmed that I no longer had admin privileges, and quietly initiated the lockout sequence. One by one, the core environments froze. Admin accounts were flagged as invalid. Password resets failed. The master build pipeline shut down. I hadn't destroyed anything. I just made the system too intricate for amateurs to fake. No one else could answer the challenge protocols. No one even knew they existed. And while chaos began bubbling under the surface, I sat in my car, hands steady on the wheel, heart surprisingly calm. I didn't leave behind a mess. I left behind proof. The system wasn't broken. It just didn't recognize anyone else. I was sitting in a cafe downtown the next morning, black coffee in hand, when the first alert hit my phone. Not a warning or a ping from the system itself. I'd already severed my links. This was a personal email from one of the junior devs. Subject, Tom, body. Hey man, did you push something last night? Everything's locked. Brent's freaking out. Darren's not answering questions. I took a sip of coffee and smiled. By 9:15 a.m., Brent was calling me. I let it ring. By 9:22, it was Darren. What the hell is going on? I can't access prod. Did you do something? I didn't reply. Not yet. I imagined him pacing that glossy office, checking his phone between frantic refreshes of the admin dashboard that now greeted him with a cheerful, invalid credentials. They probably thought it was a bug at first, maybe a deploy script gone wrong. But by 10 o'clock, more emails started rolling in frantic, panicked, and dripping with corporate desperation. Staging is locked. Brent says the build runner won't start. Who has root? Tom, please. Darren's losing it. We have the investor meeting in an hour. We can't even load the demo instance. And still, I didn't answer. It was about 10:45 when the real consequences started hitting. Brent tried to run a rollback. Failed. One of the interns submitted a support ticket to the wrong Jira board. A contractor on Slack asked, "Did you guys change the DNS settings?" and got silence in return. By 11 o'clock, the investors started arriving. They expected a clean presentation, live systems, data access, a walkthrough of the platform they were being asked to fund. What they got was Darren, sweating in a sport coat, trying to stall while Brent clicked furiously through frozen screens and timeout errors. I imagine one of the investors asked something like, "Is your lead engineer in the room?" And Darren had to say, "He doesn't work here anymore." That was the moment. The unraveling. One of those investors emailed me later, not directly, but through a mutual acquaintance. His message said, "This is what we thought we were getting from Wells. But it turns out, it was always you." I didn't reply to him either, but I saved the message. Around noon, I got a final text from Darren. "Whatever you did, please undo it. Let's talk." No apology, no accountability, just a plea disguised as a favor. I turned my phone over and finished my coffee. They thought they could cut me loose, take my work, and slot someone else into my chair like nothing would change. But this wasn't sabotage. This was architecture. And the system knew the difference between the person who built it and the ones who never bothered to learn it. Now they did too. The story wasn't ending. It was starting again, this time on my terms. Darren called first. I didn't pick up. Then he messaged. Then he emailed. Then called again. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. On the third day, he finally broke the silence with something resembling humility. "Tom, we need you back. You can name your title. CTO, partner, whatever you want." I stared at the message for a long time, not because I was tempted, but because it was laughable. For years, I was invisible, replaceable. Now I could name my title. Funny how fast respect shows up when your servers don't. So I called him back, once. Just once. He picked up immediately, voice full of fake relief. Tom, listen, man, we made some mistakes. But we can fix this. The board's on board. You come back. We'll restructure the whole chain of command. Give you equity. Hell, you want your own division? Done. I waited until he stopped talking. I don't want a title, I said calmly. I want to see what you'll do without me. He was quiet for a second, like he couldn't tell if I was joking. You're making a mistake, Tom. No, I said. I already made it. For 10 years. I'm just finally done repeating it. He didn't call again. That night, I got a message from Owen, one of the younger devs I'd mentored. Smart kid, quiet, but observant. He'd always stayed late, asked real questions, actually read the documentation. He'd been there during the lockout, trying to calm people down while Brent flailed. If you ever build something real, he wrote, I'm in. Something in me shifted when I read that. It wasn't just loyalty, it was belief. Someone had actually seen the work, understood it, valued it, and Owen wasn't the only one. Over the next few days, a slow trickle started. DMs, texts, emails. A former marketing lead who'd quit after Darren shouted her out of a meeting. A support engineer I hadn't spoken to in a year. A guy from our first office who now worked in compliance. All of them saying the same thing in different words. If you're building, we're interested. I wasn't forgotten. I wasn't too quiet or not executive material. I'd just been buried under the wrong leadership. And now I was free to do it right. Not out of revenge, not to prove a point, but because I finally saw the blueprint of what could come next. And this time, I wasn't building it for someone else. The people who once ignored me were now listening and investing. I'd shelved the idea years ago, back when I still believed loyalty would eventually lead to recognition. It was a lightweight, privacy-focused collaboration platform. No bloat, no data mining, just clean, secure functionality for people who actually cared about control. I called it Root Layer. I never pitched it to Darren. He wouldn't have understood it, not really. It didn't have the flash he liked. No AI buzzwords. No gamified dashboards. But it was smart, stable, built to last. After Owen reached out, I dug it up one night, pulling the files from my personal Git. He came over after work with a six-pack and a notebook. We sat on my living room floor until 2 in the morning sketching out what it could be now. Stripped down, lean, useful. Who's it for? Owen asked. Everyone's sick of platforms that spy on them. I said. Nonprofits, libraries, mutual aid groups, even small businesses. No pitch decks, just performance, he said, grinning. Exactly. A week later, Claire reached out. She was the co-founder of a rival firm. Not Darren's competition, but real competition. I'd helped her troubleshoot an API issue years ago during a shared vendor emergency. She remembered. I heard what happened, she said during our first call. Honestly, good. That place never deserved you. But if you're building something real, I want in. She offered seed funding on the spot. No strings. Just make it real. So we did. Owen and I worked nights, weekends. We took shifts between coding and handling early user feedback. I let him handle the social accounts. He was better at sounding like a human online. I focused on infrastructure, encryption, deployment, seamless migration tools. Every ounce of what I'd learned at Parker and Wells went into Root Layer. Only this time, it wasn't about impressing a boss. It was about protecting the user. Claire got us in front of real investors, the kind who didn't need us to perform. We showed them the working demo, smooth, fast, with zero fluff, no fireworks, no disruption talk, just something solid. When we finished the pitch, one of them, an older guy in a gray vest, leaned back in his chair and said, "This is what we thought we were getting from Wells." I didn't say anything, didn't gloat, didn't smile. I just nodded, because he wasn't wrong. Parker and Wells had always sold an illusion. But Root Layer? It worked. The demo ended. Claire locked in the first round. We had funding, a roadmap, and a growing waitlist of users who didn't want enterprise bloat, just clean tools and privacy that actually meant something. We onboarded our first nonprofit 2 weeks later, then a community health organization from Illinois, then a university IT group that had grown tired of duct taping together Google Docs and Dropbox links. Every time someone signed up, Owen would turn his chair and go, "That's another one that gets it." And he was right. They didn't need a story. They didn't need spin. They needed what I'd been quietly building for years, even when no one was looking. This time, they were. For the first time, I wasn't just keeping the lights on. I was lighting the path. I'd spent most of my career in the shadows, quietly making sure everything worked while someone else took the stage. But Root Layer didn't let me hide. There was no Darren this time. No buffer between me and the decisions. No one to blame if things went sideways. And that scared the hell out of me. At first, I second-guessed everything. The UI design we greenlit. The pricing model Claire suggested. Even my own commits, code I'd normally push without hesitation, I now stared at for an hour, rewriting the same lines just to feel in control. Owen noticed. "You're doing it again," he said one night as we hovered over our whiteboard, surrounded by empty takeout containers. "Doing what?" "Waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to be right." I looked at him. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't mocking me. Just saying it plainly, like someone who actually believed I had the answer. "You taught me this stuff," he added. "Stop acting like you're guessing." He was right. Old habits don't go down easy, though. After years of being sidelined, it was hard to trust my own voice in a room that finally listened. But little by little, I adjusted. I started running our stand-ups with confidence. I stopped apologizing before presenting an idea. I learned to lead without bracing for rejection. Root layer grew slower than I expected, but it was steady, solid. We didn't chase VC headlines. We didn't plaster ads all over social media. Instead, we focused on community, real people with real problems that our platform could solve. Nonprofits, mutual aid networks, local government teams. Even a school district in Colorado signed on to manage internal planning without fear of privacy leaks. These weren't flashy clients, but they believed in us, and that meant everything. Our office was still just a co-working space with one window that stuck half open and a broken Keurig we refused to replace. But we filled it with something real, late nights of whiteboard sketches, playlists with too much lo-fi, and shared meals eaten straight from the bag. Something else was growing too. Between Owen and me, it wasn't loud or obvious, just a quiet comfort. The way he started staying late even when we didn't need to finish anything. The way he brought me coffee before I asked. The way we'd sit side by side on the floor, laptops open, working in sync like we had for years. We didn't name it. Maybe we didn't have to. One night, while locking up, Owen turned to me and asked, "Do you regret it? Leaving?" I didn't hesitate. Not for a second. He nodded, satisfied. No more questions. Because this messy, uncertain, self-directed version of life was worth more than any title I'd been offered. I wasn't building in someone else's shadow anymore. I was leading my way. Vindication didn't come in court or headlines. It came quietly, in knowing I'd moved on. The article broke on a Monday morning. A short piece, buried on a tech news site, but it made the rounds fast enough. The headline read, "Senior engineer resigns from Parker and Wells, citing toxic leadership and unethical practices." No names were mentioned, but I didn't need them to be. The breadcrumbs were obvious, and anyone who'd worked there would recognize the initials. A few hours later, another article surfaced. Then a thread on a tech forum. Then a LinkedIn post that went semi-viral. People chimed in with their own stories: micromanagement, stolen credit, Darren taking the work of engineers and selling it as his vision. I didn't feel smug. I didn't post anything. Didn't like or comment. I just watched as the same machine that tried to erase me began collapsing under its own weight. It wasn't personal anymore. It was inevitable. The culture that let Darren shine while others burned out was finally being exposed for what it was: not innovative, not agile, not disruptive, just hollow. I was back at the root layer office, pushing out an update to our user roles feature when Owen walked in, phone in hand. "You seeing this?" he asked, flipping the screen around to show me a new headline. I glanced at it, then shrugged. "Yeah." He sat beside me, nudging my arm. "You okay?" I looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't asking if I was angry or satisfied. He was asking if I was still carrying it. The weight, the need to prove something. The part of me that had been wounded and dismissed and humiliated. And the truth was, I wasn't. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." Then I turned back to my screen and kept working. We had an update to ship. Clients were waiting. The thing about revenge is, it wants to be seen. It needs applause. But what I felt wasn't revenge. It was relief. I wasn't part of that world anymore. I wasn't waiting to be seen or thanked or invited to the table. I had built my own. And the people sitting around it, Owen, Claire, the early adopters who believed in what we were doing, they didn't care about suits or titles. They cared about the work, about a product that respected them, about a team that listened. Parker and Wells could fall or survive. It didn't matter. Their story wasn't mine anymore. Mine was still being written, update by update, line by line, not out of spite, but out of purpose. And finally, for me,